Hi guys, hope wherever you are and whatever you've been doing, you've had a sensational day. I've got a question for you. Did you know that here in Australia, as a multicultural country, that we speak over 200 languages? It's incredible. Now, Australia's multicultural demographic is reflected through a wide range of foods, lifestyles, and cultural practices. So in our pursuit for a healthy, happy lifestyle, we are so lucky that we can actually learn from all these other cultures, who demonstrate habits, rituals, and routines that can actually help us improve our well-being. And the French is a culture that we would love to talk about and to put under the microscope tonight. And we are so thrilled to have our very special guest, Marie France, a dietitian and nutritionist from Fussy Eater Solutions, who just happens to be in France as we speak. How you doing, Marie France?
I'm very well, thank you, Rachel. How are you?
Very, very well, and super excited to be talking with you. And wherever you are in France, it looks absolutely stunning. So whereabouts are you?
I'm right in the center of France, about 400 km south of Paris. And I'm right in the countryside. It's green here. It's actually called the Green Country or the Green District here. So mountains, forest. It's just beautiful, and it's a beautiful summer.
Yeah, looks absolutely stunning. Well, enjoy the warmth for us because it's really cold here in Australia at the moment. Lots to talk about, lots to learn from you and your culture. So we've got our the article to talk about. 3 key questions, but just as a quick question before we get stuck into that, just a bit of an overview and to paint the picture, the French are renowned for having very low obesity rate and half of what we have here in Australia. So as an overview, can you just tell us a little bit of an introduction as to what do the French actually do to adopt, like a healthy lifestyle, and in particular, what do they do that their children that can learn from to help them develop healthy diets and nutrition?
I guess the first thing I'd say is that the French are not very fussed about nutrition, or not so much. They probably are more focused on providing variety of foods on the table and then having regular time for meals. And so it's almost lunchtime here. And so about 3/4 of the country will stop to have lunch together, and they'll take the time to have their dinner and as well tonight. So they're very focused on that. Whereas, the Anglo-Saxons tend to look at food from a nutritional point of view. They talk about fueling the bodies. Here we talk about eating in conviviality. So that would be definitely one of the things. And the other thing would be that the French would tend to think that it's important to prepare food ourselves. So they'll be cooking, and there are associations in research with being healthy. So it's very simple, basically, what the French would do.
Well, we've got lots, and I think everything else will be like sort of elaborated on as we speak about the article and the questions. So let's get stuck into them now. So we published an article titled, "Are French Kids Better, Healthier Eaters?" So for someone who hasn't read the article, can you give us a little bit of an overview, what it's about and what inspired you to write it?
So I wrote it because, of course, there have been so many books about how the French seem to do a better job when it comes to feeding their kids. I haven't written such a book, but I know there has been a lot. And so I wanted to address this, and I wanted to show that it's not that easy, to compare, particularly when it comes to the research on health. The French are as likely to suffer from some of the illnesses that are associated with a Western type of diet. But they do have about half the obesity rate. So it's difficult to compare apples with apples when you don't have all the research in children's health. And I don't want to say that children are healthier, really. It's not, I don't think it's the case. But it was important also to me to show that French parents are really supported in their endeavor to introduce foods to their kids. So it's not that they do it on their own. They have a lot of support, particularly since kids go to childcare early on in their lives, and all of their lunches till about they reach high schools are provided by other people. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, so it's important. The French are just normal parents. They have a culture and they have support that really enable them to, I guess, introduce quite a variety of food to their kids. And so hence the perception of them being healthier eaters.
Yeah. And we'll elaborate a little bit more on the content of the article, question number 2. Let's get stuck into question number 1. So the question really we want to know, are French kids healthier eaters than Aussie kids? Tell us, are they?
So, you know, if you ever have a snack here at 4 o'clock in the afternoon with French kids, you'll be surprised that they hardly eat any food. They're probably having bread and chocolate spread or cheese. So what's healthier? You know, what is healthier? As I said, we can't really compare apples with apples, but certainly the French don't follow the guidelines, just like the Aussies. But I would say the French perhaps eat more of more wholesome. The French kids certainly eat what their parents eat. But yeah, I wouldn't dare comparing something without having the basic information for it. And there aren't any comparisons, if you like.
None, different lifestyles. Well, let's get to question number 2, because I want to be able to take out some of the parts of your article. So question number 2 is, you know, what are the main differences in terms of teaching kids how to eat? So please tell us. And I'd love to be able to talk about some of the stuff in the articles.
Yeah.
Great points in there.
So French parents pay a lot of importance to teaching their kids how to eat through rituals. So it's really about being having meals at set times,
yeah.
More often than not with parents. So dinners will usually be taken with parents. Lunchtime will usually be taken in a school or a childcare center. So there's a lot of sitting down together in conviviality that will be a very important part of that. And parents really are quite keen to develop manners in their children. It doesn't mean that, you know, kids have to sit still, but it means that they have to still sit properly and be respectful of the food that's in front of them. But there's never any compulsory, if you like, there's never any obligation to eat the food. Parents perhaps will insist that their kids try the food, taste the food, but there's never any expectation that it is eaten, really. So it's quite flexible in that way. So it's not so much about having the kids at the table and having them eat some foods. It's really about having them sit at the table. That's it, full stop. Yes. With the parents, having a chat. So that really helps, not having those expectations. And then, as I said, it's not just the parents. The kids actually go to childcare or school or high school. They eat at the canteen. So they really, I would say they formatted really to sit down with others and share food. And so the food will be shared on the middle of the table, and only the plate will be plated only as per an agreement between the child and the parent, or the child and the people who serve at the canteen. It really means that quantities are not forced upon anyone, and expectations are not forced as to the variety that could be on the more English plate. Yes. Back at home.
I'd love to be able to take these and actually quote your article if I can. So the first point you have is eating together opens a world of food to children. So in France, from childcare to high school, most children eat lunch made by professionals. At the canteen, they learn they actually sit together. And kids are totally in charge of what and how much they eat. So that's what you were just saying, so that they actually can help themselves to as much bread and food, but they dictate how much they eat. Is that right?
Correct. You would have no idea really as to what the kids are eating when there's about 6, 7, 8 of them around the table in a French canteen as you are serving the dishes on the table. And bread, I'm a dietitian, so I've actually organized meals before for canteens. Bread is served to will, if you like. So the kids can eat as much bread as they like.
Yes.
And so often imagine something, you know, they get a new dish that they are not very familiar with. It is quite likely they will eat a lot of bread on those particular days. And I remember as a kid, and I've discussed that here since I've been here, we remembered we reminisced on how we would eat a lot of bread at times. But then the dishes come back after a while. You get more familiar, and then you see your little neighbor eating whatever that is, and you'll be influenced. And so there is research that shows that in this environment, kids tend to open up a lot their food habits.
Yeah.
And yeah.
The other point I wanted to bring up, which I think is really relevant too, that as you just said earlier on about snacking at 4 o'clock, you said children get about 40% of their calories at lunchtime. So, they're offered a snack about 4 o'clock, but nothing further until dinner, which is eventually around 7 o'clock. So having structure and decent gaps between meals and snacks helps kids to learn to eat with appetite, and they know when to stop, that they've actually had enough. And you always speak about the fact that the French actually go to the table with appetite. So you haven't snacked and grazed throughout the day. You actually go and you have very specific eating meal times. But when you do eat, you'd actually go there with hunger, and which means you actually enjoy your food more, and you know when to stop when your belly is full. Is that the right way to describe it? Maybe, I don't know.
No, it is the right way. And, if you look these days at people who are struggling with weight, often they do not know how to eat with hunger and stop when they're full. And a lot of dietitians these days don't prescribe diets. They actually try to get people to go back to this very simple, self-evident rule, which is to eat at regular times and to eat when you are hungry, and then stop when you've had enough. So in France, we don't say, are you full? We say, are you still hungry? Which is, I really think, a very good question to ask your kids. Are you still hungry? And then they say yes, or they say no. And then you can leave the table. So it's never the parents deciding how much should be served. And of course, the English plate, that serves the veg and free and meat, the meat and free veg, really has expectations as to the quantity that should be eaten and what should be eaten. There's no such thing in France, really.
Yeah. So kids are really exposed to eating with patience, with presence, with hunger, I guess anticipation, and that satisfaction that when their belly's full, they finish eating altogether, And another thing you mentioned too, which is really interesting, that parents are not under stress to feed right. So that really means that they can actually relax. They know that the children actually have a full meal at lunch, and that I guess that stress can actually wipe out, I guess, appetite overall. So at the end of the day, if they're not stressing and putting pressure on their children to eat the food, that they're actually there to actually enjoy that experience of actually sitting around a table. Is that what you meant earlier on in the interview, and you were talking about that? That's what I guess the eating experience is about with the French.
Absolutely, and that's when I say Australian mums or parents really are not getting that type of support.
Yes.
The canteen here provide a proper meal. I mean, more often than not, it's hearty and it's old-fashioned, but it doesn't matter. But it's a real meal, and it's cooked by somebody who's really fought through the whole process. Yes. And so they get quite a variety of food at lunchtime. So most of the French moms I know, including myself, whenever I put my kids in French schools here, relax in the evening. You feel, well, I can't be bothered to cook tonight. This is what will be for dinner, but I know the kids have had, everything that they need at lunch pretty much. So that's definitely helping with the pressure that parents found themselves under, particularly as they, you're very busy if you're a mom, and you're very busy if you're working mom, and the evenings for most parents are dreadful and full of pressure.
Yes.
So it really helps to have that sort of support. That's for sure.
Well, I guess, in planning ahead and trying to adapt that into our lifestyle here, I guess parents that are looking for childcare, I guess should look for a childcare centre that provides quality meals. That's something that you mentioned in the article, and also to plan meals and snacks, I guess, because if a child's belly's full, and this is what you mentioned in the article, that once again, they're not going to necessarily be hungry for their meal. So are they 2 points that you would suggest that parents should be considering, maybe?
Absolutely. I find a lot of parents that I see in my practice with their extreme fussy eaters tend to overfeed, because of course the first year the child, the more worried you are about their food intake, And so these kids tend to be given food all the time, you know. There's a bit of a cultural element, I think, where Aussie parents tend to feel that they have to nourish their kid, and so they may follow their kid around at the playground with some food. That's one thing that's of course going to interfere with appetite.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
and then the second, and then the second, of course, is if you can afford a childcare center that offer meals, cooked meal, so many of them actually offer really nice meals, then go for it. It's an investment in itself, probably compared to giving your own lunchbox, but it really has the kids eat together, and it's really French style, I have to say. Very beneficial, and so says the research.
Yeah. So, I mean, following this, that we would ensure that the children's bellies are full at lunch to be able to limit the amount of snacking. And the other thing that you mentioned in the article too, which is what we just spoke about, is to elect and to actually have some time during the week where you have certain nights of the week where you actually sit and the only job is to enjoy spending time together, and the food as well. So there's lots to learn. And all of this sort of stuff is really in the article. But let's get stuck into the third question, which I'm really excited about. So you talk about, now, can you say that beautiful word? I can't pronounce it like you do, Marie-France. Say it for me. I can't say it.
Conviviality.
Okay, so you
conviviality.
And
it's interesting.
Yes,
I use it all the time. Conviviality, I guess it would be the pleasure of being together, and the pleasure in this case of being together to share food. Human beings really cook their meals. They're the only species to do that, but they also sit down and they share food. So a lot of it is about the pleasure of being together.
And that's what the question's about. The question's about if the lifestyle and what the French do is all about that, enjoying the time together, yet how are we supposed to get the nutrients from our food? So that's the question. So, you talk about the conviviality and the pleasure of eating, yet are we supposed to get nutrients from our foods? Please tell us.
Well, I think we get it from variety. In fact, you don't need a lot of vitamins and minerals throughout the day, the minute quantities, but you do get them from a variety of foods. So the more variety, so if you can have all these food groups on your table throughout the day, then you're fine, really. And that shouldn't be so complicated. Yes. But I think we tend to look at food from a performance point of view. We're trying to perform a task, to eat foods that will help our body perform. But, when it comes to what has been successful in terms of eating habits, you look at the Europeans and the Greeks in particular, the Greek diet, that's not too thought through. That has variety, that has fresh food that's prepared at home, and that's providing the nutrients through the variety. So I think a lot of parents may tend to focus a lot on fueling the bodies of their kids. They talk about protein, they talk about carbs, they talk about lipids, they limit fats, and nutrient-centered is probably taking pleasure away from eating, and good eating in a way, because when kids are showing challenges, then they're going to be given a task, which is to eat, perform some eating, and that never ever works well with kids. So in other words, you can't sell feeding to your kids in the way that you comprehend it as an adult.
Yes. Yeah. So you have to be able to just give them the experience and have them enjoy the experience, so they enjoy their food a lot more. Would that be the right way to describe it, maybe?
Yes. So maybe as you're an adult, you might decide, you might make some decisions to eat very differently from what your parents taught you. But you're at that level of understanding that your kids certainly do not have. So set the good habits, the pleasure of eating, think about the pleasure of eating first, and then you can teach nutrition by doing and by modeling what is right, by going to the market with the kids, by buying the food and preparing it. That's much more efficient than trying to really reach nutrients on your plates.
Yes, it's a very, very different way of thinking about, I guess, this a slight sort of lifestyle sort of shift. But from that perspective, the three key points that you mentioned earlier on, I think a really good starting point for a lot of parents. Once again, trying to ensure that there's as much food in their bellies in the middle of the day as possible, limiting the snacks in the meals, and trying to just give children a positive experience with eating, as opposed to putting all the pressures of all the other things that you mentioned that we do here in Australia, ensuring that they the carbs, it's the proteins and all those things. If children actually enjoy the experience of eating, that is, I think, by far is going to be a much healthier experience for them in the long run, than ensuring that they feel force-fed. Would you say, maybe?
Yeah, so that's right. So it's really about learning to eat with hunger and stopping when you've had enough. I don't talk about full bellies so much as, not being hungry anymore. I make a difference there, but also learning to eat with pleasure, learning to eat variety. A lot of the French parents, by age 3, they'll have introduced things that they really want their kids to eat, like oysters and snails. I certainly caught up with my niece, and that's exactly what my grandniece is doing. She's having all sorts of foods already at age 3. So make a list of the foods you want your family to be able to eat, and serve them and cook them, prepare them, rather than trying to really get these free vegetables on the plate.
Yes. Well, you've given us some really insightful information tonight, and lots for us, even as adults, to be able to adopt, I think, in our day-to-day lifestyle. And I think the European way of looking at things definitely is a lot healthier than a lot of us who eat through our lunch breaks and eat over a keyboard and that sort of stuff. Very different lifestyle to sort of taking that sit-down mentality every day and actually taking that time out for yourself. So lots to learn, and I'm sure there's going to be lots we can sort of talk about in further chats. But we are so thrilled to take some time away from you today. I'm so sorry, but in that beautiful background, so maybe I'll let you just go now and enjoy France and enjoy. It's lunchtime for you now, so you can go.
It's almost lunchtime, Rachel.
Yes. So you can go and do all of that stuff we've just spoken about. Enjoy that beautiful warm weather for us. Thanks for the information and just the education tonight. Hopefully everyone that's been watching is going to take some of this and adopt it into our day-to-day lifestyle, or at least start. But at least we've sort of got that education. So thanks so much, and can't wait to speak with you soon.
It's always a pleasure. I'm back early August, so I'll be back in full mode.
All right, perfect. And in the meantime, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me through my website, www.fussyeater.com.au. They can find me on Facebook and on Instagram, and they're welcome, of course, to follow me. I do give a lot of recipes for families on Instagram and on Facebook.
All right, perfect. We'll speak to you soon, and enjoy France.
Thank you, I will. Bye.